You are listening to the Bright Life Podcast, all about ways to stay inspired, chase your dreams, and find more gratitude in the highs and lows of the journey. I'm your host, Jessica Johnson. I'm a business owner, a part-time digital nomad, a self-growth junkie, a believer in other big-hearted women, and am all about sharing tips, tricks, lessons learned, and encouragement so we can all live our biggest, brightest lives. You ready? Let's do this. Hi, gorgeous. Welcome to today's episode, continuing with our theme around how do you travel a little bit more affordably if you have dreams of working remotely or even being a digital nomad for a season, maybe spending summers in a part of the world or one day having a little pied-à-terre somewhere. This is for you. These are ideas, tips, and tricks that I have gathered from about 5 years of being a digital nomad on and off, and having been to 35 plus countries now with my laptop in tow, and doing so starting in a place where I had to give up my apartment to be able to travel and to put what I would have spent on rent into Airbnbs around the world. So it's coming from a place of here's the way to do it affordably. Here's how to get creative. Here's how to make it work. I've been in all different kinds of seasons with my business, working from my laptop to having to make ends meet. And so just sharing some ideas for how it could be possible depending on where you are and where you dream of going as well. The other thing I'll say is this is not an exhaustive list, so there are probably dozens more or hundreds more ideas that you can find on YouTube videos or articles, but here's a few that I had never really thought of that actually really supported me in being able to stretch my dollar further, and so maybe it will do the same for you. Okay, so the first thing that I would think about is, can you travel to any of your dream places off season? Because we all know that Europe is amazing in the summer, right? But it's also the most expensive, most popular time to go. And there are so many charming places that you can go to in colder winter months. So this is something that I did when I first started traveling. My husband and I, when we first left and packed up our belongings and decided that we would make a go at living out of little carry-on suitcases around the world. I share more about that in the most recent episode where I share how we got the idea to work from coffee shops around the world instead of just in our hometown. So you can jump to that episode after this if you want more insight there. But what we did is we left around fall, heading into winter to go to Europe. So not the traditional time to go to Europe, but it actually helped us so that accommodations were a lot cheaper. I would say you can get accommodations for maybe half or a third of the price off season. And I had no idea how charming and memorable these towns could be, even in the off season. So I now have memories of being in Amsterdam, being all bundled up, walking to our morning coffee shop or co-working office, and there were bicycles going over the canals with everyone in their winter scarves and snow coming down and just that morning light in the winter where you can see your breath. That was so beautiful, and I can always remember what that looked like. And similar with Belgium. So we spent some time in Brussels, and we stumbled across these Christmas holiday markets where people were giving cider and fresh local foods and baked goods and standing around fires and selling little ornaments. And it became such a beautiful experience that we even years later went and made a whole trip out of just going to holiday Christmas markets because we loved it so much. So the same could be true for you. You may have this place on your list that you're thinking, I have to go in summer or spring. And actually, off-season could have its own charm about it, and you'll probably save a lot of money going in that off-season. So that would be one way to get out there and get wherever you want to go. Maybe one day you go and visit in another season, but I think you'll really find a lot to love about these places, even in the colder months as well. So that was a big one. Another one would be to remember that long flight between continents is probably the most expensive and definitely the longest, most grueling part of the travel. So if you can do that less, you can not only probably make travel a lot more enjoyable for yourself because you're not constantly on a 9 to 13-hour flight, but you can also save a lot of money and make your dollar go a lot further that way as well. So that's something that my husband and I did as well, not even really intending to, but we would go to one continent at a time. So South America or to Europe or to Asia for a period of time. And then we would just jump regionally because those regional flights tend to be a lot cheaper, oftentimes even way cheaper than they are in the US. So whereas in the States, you might pay a few $100s to go between states, a lot of times in other countries or other regions of the world, you might pay $30 or $40 for a regional flight between countries. I know that's definitely the case for Europe. It can be the case for South America as well. And so that can be a big tip, as you may save up for that bigger flight, but then after that you can travel so affordably throughout parts of the world. You can go on trains. A lot of countries are much more connected than the US is with their train systems and public transportation, and then even just the flights can be so much cheaper. I just saw a reel where someone said they got a flight between London to Italy for like $9, and I personally have never found a deal that good, but it just goes to show a lot of people were commenting that they had seen the same. So you may find that if you can save up for that bigger flight, then after that, you'd never have to pay something that substantial again. Another pro tip would be to use airline miles for the bigger flight. So if you have a credit card that saves up airline miles, then those could be the best flights to use those miles for because the rest of them aren't going to break the bank the same way. So that would be my second tip, is to just see where you can get as far as a continent goes, save those big flights and stay in a certain region for as much time as you can. See as much of it as possible before you venture back to the States or wherever you're based, so that you can kind of like make the most of wherever you go, get back home, and then make another big trip when you are ready to explore a little bit more around it. And of course, things like copywriting and what I teach can help so much because you're able to take your work on the road with you, and you're able to maybe go away for longer periods of time than you can in a traditional job. So link in show notes for more about that as well. A third tip that I would have is to think outside of Europe and North America. So there are so many amazing places around the world that tend to be a little bit more budget friendly than the States or Europe can be. So places like Southeast Asia are incredible. Places like South America. I've had some of the best memories in countries like Argentina, where my husband and I, one of our favorite cities ever has been Buenos Aires, where we got to go and eat the most amazing food and learn the tango, and they have these streets covered in purple trees called jacarandas, and you can make your dollar go so much further. You may be thinking of US prices or, wherever you're at, prices there, but there could be lots of places around the world that are incredible and also not as expensive. And on that note, I want to share with you a mantra that I've carried with me, because I know that it can be intimidating if you haven't traveled much, or if you're thinking about going to a place that is completely new to you. You may have this fear around it, because I know that we all get headlines all the time and there's all these stereotypes around the world. But I once heard this YouTube vlogger say, "The world is a safe place," kind of in an offhand remark, and that always stood out to me. So I wrote about it on an Instagram post once, and I want to just read it to you in case it offers just a helpful mantra that you can borrow as well. Okay, so here goes. The world is a safe place. I once heard someone say this and it stood out to me, and it's since become a mantra I repeat while traveling to new places. Yes, there are heartbreaking conflicts around the world. And yes, these are often highlighted and exploited online for profit, but for the vast majority, the people you meet when traveling are warm and welcoming, their traditions are unique and touching, their homemade cuisine is delicious and special, and their towns are beautiful and unforgettable. People are often so genuinely excited and proud to welcome you to their home and share who they are and what they're about with you. I'm sharing in case you want to borrow this affirmation like I have. A few days ago in Bratislava, a town I had never heard of in a part of the world I had never been, a rosy-cheeked woman hosted us in her tiny coffee shop full of homemade cakes and families huddled around tables laughing together in other languages, and twinkly lights and statues filled the shop celebrating various holidays and religions, and I remembered. The world is a safe place, and I'm grateful every time I get the blessing of seeing another part of it. So I want to share that with you as well in case you are open to going to places that you've maybe never thought of or that feel so completely different from what you're used to. The world is a safe, beautiful place, and anywhere you go will give you memories that light you up for the rest of your life. So those are a few of my top tips. I think the other main theme is just to be creative. So better questions lead to better answers, right? So if you think, oh, I can't do this, or there's no way for me to do it, that doesn't really get you anywhere. But if you think, how could I do this? How could I make this a reality? Your brain is this supercomputer that's going to give you way better answers. So for us, when we started to ask that question, we weren't in a position where we had the business success or anything that we have grown over the past several years, but we were able to get creative by giving up our apartment so that we could go and spend the money that we spend on rents every month in other parts of the world, on Airbnbs. We sublet for a period of time where when we were gone for a longer period, we had people that stayed in our place so that we could earn income from them and cover our rents that way. These days, there's Airbnbs, you can get a side hustle, you can learn copywriting to bring in more income or to be able to work from anywhere in the world on the location and schedule that you choose. So, I don't know your situation, and I know that travel is a huge gift and blessing and privilege, but I also, want to share with you just that your brain is so freaking smart that if you start posing that question, you may start seeing opportunities pop up everywhere in your own life in your own way that give you the opportunity to make this a reality for you and show you creative ways with your finances, with your miles, with your points, with all kinds of things that you can make it a reality in your own life. So I just want to never limit someone or make someone feel like another person is special or has something else. You in your own way can be creative and make this a reality if it's a strong enough desire for you. So just offering you that little nugget as well. Okay, so that's what I would say. If you're curious about how to travel on a budget, how to work remotely, or even be a digital nomad, those are a few of the things that really helped me stretch my money further and make it a reality when I had really not traveled much internationally at all. So I hope they give you some ideas. Let me know in the comments or on Instagram at Hi Jessica Johnson where you're going to go, what you're going to do, if this sparks anything new for you, and cannot wait to see and follow along your travel journey and photos as well. Thank you so much for listening in. If you love this episode, I have 2 things you are going to love. One is a free copywriter training full of 5 steps to build a profitable copywriting business as your own boss, no matter how much experience you're starting with. Copywriting is what took me from a 9-to-5 to freedom as my own boss to travel, choose my schedule, replace my corporate income, and have time to work on creative projects like this podcast. And I'd love to give other women the same opportunity. Another, of course, is my book, Your Bright Life. You can find it on Amazon or Audible, where I narrate the audiobook. So it's kind of like a podcast in book form. All of these things are in the podcast show notes. Thank you again for listening. I appreciate you and your review so much, and I'll see you back here next Thursday.